in New York? Okay, cool. Yeah, so you can go to the next slide. We also have 600 employees. We're a remote-friendly company. Usually when people talk about DigitalOcean, they talk about the simplicity of DigitalOcean's products. Our infrastructure is very simple to use. It's very easy to get up and running, and also to go from getting set up, but also to scaling, and specifically focused on developers and startups. We go to the next slide. So yeah, I already mentioned this. Skip ahead. I want to get right into the good material. These are some of our product offerings. You can check them out on the site, so we can skip that. And one thing up, go back to Hatch. Yeah, so Hatch is something that we're really excited about to share with most of you tonight. Hatch is our startup program. So Dale talked about what some of the training program creates startups, right, as we were saying. So the Hatch program is specifically not for the training program portion, it's for startups around the world to scale on DigitalOcean. We offer a whole lot of resources for startups to be a part of the DigitalOcean ecosystem. It's a great community. We organize events like this. You obviously get some infrastructure credit if you're a part of Hatch. Actually, do we have any Hatchers in the house tonight? I'm curious. Boom, there we go. Welcome, thanks for coming. And let's go to the next slide. Yeah, this is some of the stuff that I mentioned that you get when you join the Hatch program. You can also, Holly and Kwasi, can you raise your hands for the Hatch program if you want to talk about Hatch. These are the best points of contact to talk about Hatch tonight. You can go next. One thing I wanted to shout out is we work with a lot of partners. That's how we are able to reach such a large amount of startups around the world. And we're proud that Nest is one of those partners up there alongside some really established ones on the US side, YC and Techstars. DigitalOcean actually started as a Techstars company as well 7 years ago, which is a fun fact that not a lot of people know. And then let's close this out. Next slide. Yeah, so check out DigitalOcean. We're here all night. We want to talk to you, but really the main focus for tonight is the Fireside Chat. And without further ado, I'd like to invite Kwasi and Al to come so we can have Fireside Chat. And hold your questions. We're going to have breakout sessions at the end. But if you have some questions, please write them down on your phone. Hold on to them because you're going to have a chance to ask them any follow-up questions that you'd like. Okay? So Al, Kwasi, please. How you guys doing?
Doing great. Daniel, you were remiss in skipping Oktoberfest.
Oh, was there a Oktoberfest slide in there? There was. Okay. Let me ask. Oh, we ran right through that. Actually, quick. Who has not heard of Oktoberfest? Who's never seen this? Fantastic. Okay. So Oktoberfest is a large open source initiative where we encourage folks to contribute to open source, and it's kind of gamified. So you contribute, and then you get a reward. You get a T-shirt as a prize, and it's a global reaching program. And there were actually at least one event that took place here, with maybe two. There was one here. There was one here that took place in October. So this year, 600 events took place, 40 countries in Africa, 40 events in Africa, 20 countries. Next year, we want to have 2,000 events. So I'm going to be looking and talking to all of you. This is the program that I run, and I'm really excited to talk to all of you about organizing many Oktoberfest events next year. Okay, we got that out of the way. Thank you for calling that out. All right, so I want to start off by asking you guys, curious, what was the first computer that you ever got? How did that come about, and what did you do with the first computer?
For me, it was an Apple II GS. That's how old I am. It was a next generation Mac at Apple at the time. I learned BASIC and Pascal on it, and then just got me introduced to programming. So I just wrote small games and moved around with it. Did some homework. That was about it.
Cool.
For me, it was the TI-85. It was this monstrous machine with a cartridge on the left side where you could actually play video games that were knockoff of Pac-Man, a game called Munchman, and there was a keyboard associated with it. And I loved the games, and it came along with a basic book of code. So the code actually allowed me to enter into the world of software development. And at the time, I was just what we would call a script kiddie. I would just see the language and I would just completely just I would type in exactly what I saw, and then something would happen. And when that something happened, that was actually pretty interesting. The first set of things were basic instructions, 1 + 1 = 2, hello, how are you? And you go from there and you have a few lines of code to, I remember the culminating event, I was very proud of it, was a program called Mr. Bojangles. And there must have been, it felt like 10,000 lines of code, but I think in retrospect it might have only been 100. But for a 6-year-old boy writing 100 lines of code, I think just my eyes were red, I was tired, exhausted from running. And when I hit enter the first time, can you all imagine what happened? It didn't compile, right? Because I had a syntax error. So I then spent the next couple of days just going back through trying to figure out where were the mistakes in the code, and that's when it actually became magical. So I then spent the next couple of days just going back through trying to figure out where were the mistakes in the code, and that's when it actually became magical for me. You hit the run button, and this little animated 8-bit figure was dancing around on the screen. So I went from there to then doing basically what became a QA, because now I could actually go back and understand the syntax of the programming language and making some adjustments on the fly to change the application to my satisfaction. And that was a very edifying experience for me using the old device there. So that was.
Listen, you mentioned your age. Can you share around what time this was?
This was in the late 80s.
And you. Okay. What was Apple? Which Apple?
2GS.
2GS.
So I mean, it was everything you imagine about an older computer, right? It was like a big. It was probably this tall. It had floppy drives on it. Very little memory. Compared to today's machines. It had a really loud printer that came with it. But it had everything I needed at the time. One of the things that you used to do back then is there used to be these magazines that you would buy, and the magazines would have in the back of them listings of code for a particular program to do something. So this was prior to the internet and buying stuff, right? I mean, so you, like you, I would spend days just typing the code into the machine until it finally completed, and then you would, mess with the compilers to figure out what are your mistakes and get it right. But the moment you get it right, there was definitely a reward there in seeing something that you wrote actually, doing some magic out there. It became even more magic once I started writing my own programs. I remember writing a game once where I just wanted to have a plane animated across the screen and drop bombs. And there would be targets that would be moving. So I spent a lot of days working on that, but once I got it working, it was really cool to watch it happen and show it to family and say, hey, I made this. So.
That leads into my next question. I'm curious, based on that, sort of as you two were, what's your earliest memory of wanting to be a certain profession? Do you have, that everyone was like, I want to be this when I grow up. Do you have, what was kind of what were some of the early things that came up? It doesn't have to be just one.
Yeah. I mean, there were two professions for me that I wanted to be. One was I wanted to be a pilot. I wanted to fly all over the world and, take off in big jets, blah, blah, blah. What kid doesn't want to be a pilot? The other one was I knew I wanted to be an engineer. What kind of engineer, I did not know. My dad was an electrical engineer by training, and he's the one that actually exposed me to computers very early on. He had a Z80, which was a very old, small thing that you plugged in on the TV, so you can do your programming that way, and it, with a keyboard on it. But at the time, I knew I wanted to be an engineer of some sort, but I didn't know what. It crystallized, in high school once I started writing apps and talking with friends that were doing the same thing. Then I went to college. When I went to college, actually, I wanted to be an electrical engineer. And then my first semester I took a programming class, and everybody in the class thought this was so hard, and people were dropping out of the class, and I'm like, too easy. So I took that as a sign that maybe this is what I should be doing, and I changed my major right there, and then I never looked back.
Wow. Kwasi, what about you?
I never wanted to be a software engineer. I was not. My father, some of you may have heard this, was a computer science professor. He was an advisor to the national government and taught at University of Ghana in Legon. And computers were always around our house. They were just always there. So software development it wasn't even something, I never wanted to be anything like it. I didn't want to do anything that he wanted to do. But at the first occupation I can remember wanting to be was an orthopedic surgeon. Because as I'm sure like most of you in this room, our parents limit the focus of what we're allowed to go and pursue from a rigorous academic perspective, right? You have to do a hard science, so very limited room for us to become Chinois Cheves, or Fela Kutis, have to be a doctor or a lawyer, right? So I wanted to be an orthopedic surgeon. And the simple reason had limited reason to do with, job safety or economics or money. But in the third grade, I was in North Carolina, and one of my classmates, a guy by the name of Richard Kleiman, his parents were divorced. So Richard, if you're watching this video, I apologize for sharing the story. Don't shoot me, don't tweet this. His parents were divorced, and Richard's father was Jewish, and his mother was Christian. So Richard got to celebrate 2 holidays in December. And his father was an orthopedic surgeon. And I remember for one Hanukkah, he got the entire set of toys for a program called Mask. Some of you may be too small or too young to remember, that cartoon series, but you can Google it after the session. But he had the entire collection, and I said, whatever Richard's dad does, that's what I want to do. Because this guy had money. So I always wanted to be an orthopedic surgeon. I even had a game plan going into high school. I was going to go to Georgetown undergraduate, and then for graduate school, I was going to go to Johns Hopkins and become an MD, and I was going to go off and become an orthopedic surgeon. But it just turns out that when I got to university, you have to declare, and for those of you who have either studied in the States or have exposure to the States, at some point you have to declare your major. I went to a liberal arts school, so I had a year or two to decide. And going through the pre-med process was grueling. It's rigorous. And it was tough for me, so I had to think very deeply about what is it that I really wanted to do. My dad said to me, he said, Kwasi, just take one computer science class. I'm not saying you have to major in it. So whatever you do, computational thinking is going to be important for whatever your vocation ultimately is. And I think he may have known what he was doing because it turns out the classes were fairly easy to me, right? No surprise there. I've been around this technology my whole life. None of these classes were difficult. People were complaining. It was my third language, right? I knew it very well. And it turns out, because I was good at it, you can party and hang out well into the evening, right? And as long as you show up in your lab, your code compiles, you get an A, right? It's not as any more difficult as all the memory of organic chemistry and physical chemistry. So it came easily to me, and I was able to find myself, in that work. So I matriculated, through the program, and then entered into the economy in Web 1.0. You can Google that as well. So that was my entry point into software development.
Continuing on this track, curious about your career paths to get to this moment which we're in right now. And particularly, obviously don't want you to go in and share your full story. They'll be there all night if you're really interested in the full breakdown. Come up to them and talk. But really, just a few key moments, in your career journey that you would, in a moment like this, that you think is you're really interested in the full breakdown. Come up to them and talk. But really, just a few key moments, in your career journey that you would, in a moment like this, that you think is a good opportunity to share maybe a few key moments in the career path.
So for me, slightly checkered path. chapter one of my life, large bureaucratic organizations. I thought I was going to always work in those environments. And then, just candidly, I lost my job. There was a recession, and I had to think about what I was going to do next. At a point in time, luckily enough for me, there was an election. President Obama was elected President of the United States, and I wanted to work in the administration. So I actually applied for and was accepted for a fellowship in Washington, D.C. And while I was there, I fully expected I was going to return back to industry, go back to big, boring, large Fortune 500 companies. And while I was there, I got to work on something pretty cool. I got to work with the capital markets on the investment thesis around making education technology a more attractive place for investors. So I spent a lot of time with private equity, venture capitalists, entrepreneurs, a lot like yourself, and I caught the bug. It turns out I really, really enjoy talking to all of you who think very, very creatively beyond the constraints of what exists out there, and it was contagious. I jumped in and I participated and got to ride the roller coaster. Some incredibly successful organizations, some very scary fire sales, penny pounds on the dollar, because that's the entrepreneurial journey, and got to do a variety of different things in software development, corporate development, marketing, product management. I got to do a range of things I was not going to be able to do just working at a large iron organization, which kind of brings me ultimately here in front of you all this evening.
Any highlights that you want to share? It seems like there was going to be a clear. It seems like your trajectory was, from an earlier time, it was clear what you were going to be doing. Still, I'm sure it wasn't just a linear path.
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of luck. I mean, I think I specifically remember my sophomore year, my second year at the university. I'm taking a summer class, and there's a gentleman that walks in and he says, "Hey, there's a professor that is looking for somebody to write software for meteorology data." So this professor was doing research. He had these balloons that he would just let up in the air, and they would measure stuff, and then they would capture the balloon later on and load up the data. So in college, I worked for him, and I wrote code. I wrote Fortran programs to process that data. Then from there, by the time I graduated, I already had all this experience. It was very easy to find a job, and I worked for a printer company that did white body printer posters, and that was a really fun job. Writing software that actually went into hardware that moved the printer, and you could see what you were doing. I really enjoyed that. And then the company did not do very well, so I ended up leaving. And there was a moment where I actually was driving home, and my apartment building was on fire.
Wow.
But that same week, I had gotten a call from HP in Colorado saying, "Hey, do you want to come interview for us?" So I took that. Okay, it's probably a sign. So I accepted. So I moved from Minneapolis to Colorado, and ended up working for HP for many years. At HP, I had the fortune of really working within a big company, but in startup fashions, where we got to start businesses going from different areas and trying different things. And it was really, we call it entrepreneurship, because you were doing, you were building new things inside a company, but you had that safety net to some degree. But you had their support as well, and it was very rigorous. You would study the markets, you would figure out what you need to build, you would work with marketing, manufacturing, everybody would just kind of build something. So I did that for a number of years, and then eventually I met up with some friends that wanted to start a different type of company. So I left HP at that time and started getting exposed to more entrepreneurship from that standpoint. We did a startup that was actually turned out to be pretty successful. We got acquired a couple of times, and then after that I've tried a number of different things in terms of where I wanted to take my career, and that ended up bringing me to DO.
Yeah. So about DO, I'm curious, what is it about your job today that you love? What's maybe one thing you really love, that you kind of show up to work and you actually really you love this thing?
There's lots of aspects. I like the problem solving. I like all aspects of it. I think the problem solving from, so I became VP of engineering at DO, so I don't write code all the time anymore, but I do tinker with it and mess with it. But a lot of what I deal with now are problem solving around, our teams, our projects, our constraints, our budgets. So the strategy tends to be something that I enjoy in terms of working with outside companies, our internal marketing and product management to figure out where do we need to be in 3 to 5 years. So all of that is the kind of work that really excites me. But I really love working with the people at DO. It's a very fun group of people and very energetic, and I enjoy that very much.
Let's see what they
Since he stole the people, I'll say I love working with all of you. I think DigitalOcean is an organization that's talked about love. It's in one of our mission statements. And I think that extension goes out to all of you guys. So it's the opportunity to be there at the early stage as you guys grow your organizations, grow your companies, and turn them into incredible opportunities. I look forward to being able to talk about, remember back when, in December 13th, 2019, we sat in this room and you were working on your fledgling ideas. And that fledgling idea turned into a large enterprise. That's what gets me excited. When I look in the data and I see what's going on in your minds, when I see the businesses growing and slowly progressing, that's what really makes me very happy about being in DigitalOcean.
And you probably figured that I would ask you the other side of that. What are the more challenging parts of the role? Now, why don't you kick us off? Pour some water.
I mean, there are parts of the jobs that are hard. I mean, I think of my job as a heavily constrained problem as well. I mean, no job will you have all the resources you need, all the money you need, all the people you need. So there's always a trade-off being made somewhere. And I get to be in the middle of that. I would say that probably dealing with major outages is never fun. So we always feel the pressure to get our customers back online and get the environment going right away. But it is part of the job. So when that happens, you just have to focus and remain calm and just make sure that the team is on board for doing whatever's necessary to get the customers back online.
Makes sense.
Well, for me, it's the other side of the coin. I mentioned before about what I love. The reality is that innovation board for doing whatever's necessary to get the customers back online.
Makes sense.
Well, for me, it's the other side of the coin. I mentioned before about what I love. The reality is that innovation, entrepreneurship, disruption, it's difficult, it's hard, and it's also fraught with failure. So a lot of the companies that we work with don't thrive. They don't get to exit level, they don't get to escape velocity, and they disappear. And it's not just zeros and ones on the page. You realize that somebody somewhere took a chance on this and it affected their livelihood. They weren't able to turn their dream into a reality. They had to go find something else. And I see that way more often than I see the successes. So it's difficult. I guess is what I'd say, because I'm so optimistic, and I actually genuinely believe, and I want to believe, that every single one of those organizations that comes into our program is going to be successful, and the next, billionaire is going to come out of this room and this continent, building on a SaaS platform. And Holly reminds me all the time, this entrepreneurship stuff is hard. It really is. All of you guys have to pull together and make sure that you stay in contact with each other, so you can be resilient for each other and have success, because you're going to run into challenges, and each one in this room has a responsibility, I think, to help to make sure that you do actually can recover and you do go to the next stage, even if it's not with the initial dream, but you continue to try it what the next thing might be. And I'm still actually really excited when we have people that were former hatchers, their enterprise didn't go anywhere, and then they come back, right? Those are the things, the stories I'm looking forward to seeing more of, right? Because that story of failure and embracing that rapid failure helps you figure out what the next thing is.
And on that note, what is the significance of DO being specifically here for Ghana Tech Week for the year of return, being here in this moment? What's the significance of that?
So for me, it's about opportunity. On a personal level, as a child of the country, I want to see as many companies flourish from here as possible. Success would be thousands of companies coming from West Africa and Sub-Saharan Africa that are SaaS companies that are part of our ecosystem. DigitalOcean is the touch point for 500,000 companies around the planet onto the web, and I wish double that was coming from Sub-Saharan Africa. I think being here in Accra at this point in time, the spirit of reclamation is a chance to reach back and pull through and make sure that Africa is a part of this next evolution, whatever it means, making sure that we're at the forefront of pushing for that innovation and that leadership. There's too much history, too much talent, and too much potential here for us to get left in the wake. So I want to make sure that you all are aware of how important what you're doing is to that future, and see that we're trying to make a significant investment here and making sure that you all are successful.
Yeah, I think for me it's a similar story. I was born in Senegal, and I've been away for many years, many decades. So this is a great opportunity to come back and share our story and also provide resources that are available through the various programs we have. It seems to me that the having been in this industry for so long, you see the barriers to entry just lowering every year. There's a lot of open source platforms out there. There's there's a lot of frameworks for doing work. There's a lot of ways to learn. There's a lot of communities out there on the internet. So for me, I think there's this huge opportunity that is opening up for people to actually just jump in and create something new and have the opportunity to do so without large startup capital. I mean, anybody here could write something in the next few days that goes online and becomes a hit on either iOS or Android or just a website. So compare that to trying to build a new car, right? I mean, it does not even scale, and I think the revolution that has happened with the mobile technology, with the internet, is that it will allow Africa to get past the industrialization that a lot of the Western countries have to go through. We can leapfrog that and go to the N+2 scenario of going directly into the digital era and start building capabilities there. So I see it as a great opportunity to innovate and accelerate a lot of growth, economic growth that otherwise would have taken too much capital.
Absolutely. And then just to close things out, what is one piece of advice that you would give to your younger self? Specifically in the context of her career, I think.
I would have told a younger me to take more risk. It turns out that your ability to recover from adversity is a lot easier when you have less at stake. Meaning, for those of you who are thinking about families and children and setting up shops in place, the more entrenched you become in any one of those things, family, real estate, career, the more difficult it becomes to recover. And I mean that in every sense of the word. So take some risk. If you're young, don't dismiss that. That's one of the most important things that the continent brings to the table, is the talent in the youth, right? And if you take a chance, you have actually an opportunity to recover later on. People will give you more opportunities. The world is more receptive to you guys taking a chance and taking a shot. And the other thing I would say is try to bring other people with you who also don't have a voice at the table. And I say that specifically because I see there's only 2 women in the room right now, and I appreciate you all coming here. One of the things that I think about a lot is who else has permission to be at the table. And when you have permission, you have some power and authority. Make sure you bring somebody along with you, right? That's always an important thing to do, because it's too hard to figure these things out by yourselves. Bring a friend.
Yeah, just to add to what you said, software is a team sport. Software is best written when there's a group of people that each contribute something different. And that applies to gender, that applies to people being different, coming from different places. They see something that you won't see. So, you only know what you can see, right? So I think it's really important that we embrace that diversity, especially here in Africa, where we are far more diverse than actually the rest of the world give us credit for. There's a lot of different languages spoken. There's a lot of different ways of being. So embracing that diversity, I think, is really important, because it'll create this exchange of thoughts. So, I mean, to go back to what you asked, the advice I would give myself. Is hard work is important. Work ethic is important, but also find what you really love to do. I think for a long time I relied on sheer hard work versus just watching my talent, and that was, I'm sure everybody here can relate to, no social life, you're just working too much. So I think, part of it is to find that thing you love that comes naturally to you as well, that makes it easier when the going gets tough as well.
Fantastic. Great note to end on. Thank you both so much for joining and sharing.
So I think, part of it is to find that thing you love that comes naturally to you as well, that makes it easier when the going gets tough as well.
Fantastic. Great note to end on. Thank you both so much for joining and sharing your insights and experiences with everyone. So a few things. Andrew, how's the food looking?
Great.
Ready. Great. All right. So here's just a few more notes before we move on to the next part of the night.